Keldon Johnson is in a big slump. Is this a sign of bad things to come?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey guys, this is Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia. It's morphin' time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. TJIF, everybody. Hope you're having a great end of the work week. Getting ready for a Spurs game tonight. I don't know. Maybe you're not, considering they've been abysmal of late. Of 9 straight games. But we're going to look at tonight's game. Spurs, Pelicans, and the Spurs pull it out. Can they get the W, or we're looking at their 10th straight loss? Also, Keldon Johnson, he has been struggling, and that is an understatement. What is going on with KJ? And I'm going to ask my guest just how far will his fandom for the Spurs / NBA gear take him? What are the limits? Could this be the limit? We'll find out in just a few seconds. He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star, co-host of the Saturday Morning Hangover. We're going to rush through this episode, everybody, because Pledger has a lot of nerd movie trailer catch-up to do. You got a lot of homework on your plate, James.
I have things to do, and it is very important that I get it done immediately.
By the way, Pledger's a little mad at me right now because I kind of spoiled the Guardian of the Galaxy one for him, but hopefully he'll forgive me. I'm hoping you forgive me.
We'll see. I may have to go hunt down the Infinity Stones and snap you out of this.
Well, let's dive into it. Before we dive into it, make sure to follow Pledger on Twitter at @IamPledger. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Pledger, to say, well, maybe you can, if you find the gauntlet, maybe you can snap KJ out of his misery right now, shooting misery, or get him to the quantum realm and find a point where he wasn't shooting so bad. He's in a slump. And it is a bad slump. This is not a 2-game slump, a 3-game slump, hell, even a 4-game slump. This is approximately a 10-game shooting slump. We're going to go over the numbers in just a few minutes. It is bad. I think everybody's aware of this. He's aware of this. What is going on with him, James?
I mean, it's a slump. Like, it's just plain and simple. Like, all shooters go through slumps at some point in their career. Like, it's something I have no doubt he will pull himself out of. But you can go over the numbers with me. I heard them on halftime with Jimenez. I get it, man. I get it. There's cause for concern. There's cause that maybe losing's taking its toll on him and his confidence or whatnot. But I think it's simple as sometimes you just need to see the basket go in. And as a slasher like Keldon is, like, even driving to the bucket, it's not dropping for him right now. And that's tough.
Well, you mentioned those numbers. Let's go over them. Again, we're looking at the last 10 games. And yes, believe it or not, if you shorten the span of games of each of the last 4 or 5 games, it's worse than these numbers. Yes, it's worse. But we're going to give KJ a 10-game sample size here. 32% shooting from the field. He is 52 of 163 shots from the 3-line, James. 26%. He's taken 85 of those threes, made 22. He's averaging about 17 points per game, which is not terrible, but definitely not, KJ standards. And free throw percentage is even down to 74%. And
remember
he's not getting to the free throw line too. Only 35 times in the last 10 games. It's just,
you remember in the first 7 games when he was shooting 44% from 3?
Yeah, I remember that.
When they were 5-2.
Yep.
Look, it's a shooting slump, man. Like, he was shooting 44% earlier, and we can overreact to this all we want and say his confidence is shot, the losing's taken its toll, Chip England leaving is affecting him. Like, it's 10 games. Now, if this shooting slump expands over 20 to 25 games, that's a concern. If it starts to stretch out over the season and those numbers don't start to correct itself in any way, shape, or form, then that's a cause for concern. But right now, he's still averaging 17, 18 points a game over that 10-game stretch, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So he's getting his points. He's not getting calls. He's getting hit on the way to the bucket, which is affecting his shot. He's not getting to the free throw line. Like, sometimes you just need to see the ball go through the net a couple of times, and it's better. And it's as simple as, and I remember one of my old basketball coaches, like, if the shot wasn't falling, he said, go to the rack. One of two things will happen. You'll make a couple of layups and you'll start feeling better, or you'll get fouled, shoot some free throws, because I was a 90% free throw shooter, and you would start feeling better. Like, it's that simple.
Yeah, it's not that he's not contributing points. I mean, the last 3 games, it is double figure scoring. 19 points versus the Thunder, 26 points versus the Lakers, and then 15 points against that Lakers game again when they had that series at the AT&T Center, the 2 games. So he's contributing. He even had a double-double, 26 and 10 in the last meeting against the Lakers. It's just the shooting is just off, and it is bad. And this is a guy, James, that got paid, and he's not performing the way a guy who got paid the way he did should be paid. So am I hearing you correctly? A 10-game, we're just using 10 games. A 10-game slump is still no cause for panic? I mean,
not panic. I mean, it is cause for concern, but not panic. Like, I'm not worried about it. 10 games is what? Less than 1/8 of the season.
Mm-hmm. The last time that he had a really good game was back on November 11th versus the Bucks. He scored 29 points in 32 minutes, shot 9 for 17, over 50% shooting there, 53%, and made 5 3-point shots. And then after that, guess what? The Spurs start to lose, and they go on that losing streak. And that was a win, by the way, over a very depleted Milwaukee Bucks team.
Yeah, I was about to say, it was a win over a G League.
Yeah,
Let's
it was
calm
pretty much
down a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically beat Alizé Johnson in the Austin Spurs.
Yeah. But even before that game, November 9th versus Memphis, another bad shooting, 26%, 4 for 15 against Memphis in a loss. Do you think
you know what the correlation with all of these things that I'm seeing is?
What's that?
They played what? They played Minnesota, 3 times in like the first 7 games?
Yeah.
They weren't good at the beginning of the year. They played a very depleted Milwaukee team. They,
a Philly team
Memphis,
that wasn't ready yet. Yeah.
They played the Lakers, who are kind of starting to figure things out and crawl out of the cellar as the Lakers are putting things together. Like, teams are starting to play better, and the Spurs are playing good, but not good enough. And I look at the first half of their last game against the Thunder, where everything's falling for almost everyone, it seems.
Yeah.
Keldon was struggling, but he was getting some buckets, and the ball was moving. People were getting clean looks. And then I look at that second half, and the ball's sticking. There is no beautiful movement anymore. Like, it was a tale of 2 separate halves. And I understand shooting struggles can be difficult to pinpoint, whether it's the player, whether it's the mental, whether it's the form, combination of everything. But I also think some of it, when you're dealing with guys like that, is you're playing better teams, and sometimes, yes, losing can take a toll, but even more than that, sometimes you're just not getting good possessions, and you're taking bad rush shots, and you're not. And second half of last night was case in point. Like, I don't care if it was Devin or Keldon or Trey or who. Nobody got good looks in the second half.
Yeah, and let's not forget defenses are keen on him too. Yeah.
Yeah, and at times, let's face it, this team just doesn't sense in terms of getting people clean looks at the basket. And I don't think any of us tried to argue that, Keldon or Devin or anybody was a Batman. We all kind of see them maybe in Robin role if we're using those, analogies still. Yeah. Like, we've always thought they were a good 1B, 2 to a championship team. And that's what they are. But there isn't one single Batman on this roster.
Absolutely
to help take the pressure off and help alleviate looks for other players. They have to get good looks with good ball movement.
Absolutely. We're talking with James Pledger. He is with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. When we get back, we're going to continue our chat about Keldon Johnson, talk about tonight's Spurs-Pelicans game, and much, much more, including big baseball caps. And looking forward to hearing what James has to say about that. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer, esports. They got it all over at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, they got those two over at Bet Online as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device, your cell phone, your laptop, your computer. Go learn more about Bet Online. Why? Because that's where the game starts. We're back with James Pledger. He is with San Antonio Sports Star, co-host of the Saturday Morning Hangover. We're talking about Keldon Johnson, about to talk about the Spurs Pelicans, and much, much more. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen today. Second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. Go behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. And we got to get James out of here quick because he has some nerd catching up to do. By the way, did you love that? I know you did tell me you saw the Beast Wars.
I did. I saw the Beast Wars trailer, and that looks like the best Transformer movie that I've seen since Revenge of the Fallen, which was the second one. They've all been downhill since that.
I vaulted B, number one. Because at least that was the first time we saw signs of them trying to at least make them look like the G1 Transformers. And it had a little bit more G1 feel to it. Second place was the first Shia LaBeouf one. I kind of like that one. And that was very action-packed. I think it's underrated. And brutal, too. Very brutal. I mean, we saw Jazz get eviscerated. So,
I just remember early in Revenge of the Fallen when Optimus is killed, and I almost crumbled, thinking, "Oh my God, not again!"
Here we go again, yeah. And then, but I mean, and then I loved it when the first Transformer movie came out, and I remember friends like complaining about how that one Decepticon launched out a scorpion out of his back. I'm like, why y'all complaining about that? Soundwave did the exact same thing. They're paying homage to that, so. Whoa,
this episode, I have a tape cassette in its chest.
Exactly. But hey, one thing we wish we can happen for Keldon is that he starts dropping some buckets here. But am I hearing you correctly, Pledger, that for the most part, is this much to do about nothing, ultimately?
I think ultimately it's much to do about nothing. Now, if the struggles continue throughout the season and he doesn't turn it around, there could be cause for concern just in terms of his confidence, right? Because you don't want to irreparably harm that. But at the same time, he's the focal point. He and Devin, let's face it, are the focal point of all of these teams. And this is also a team dealing with massive injuries. No Jeremy Sohan. No Jakob Poeltl, which helps to at least provide some relief down low to where you can't crash as hard on Keldon when he comes into the paint because fear of him dropping it off the yacht for an easy shot. Like, you're missing what? 20, not 20, but probably 15 to 17 points a game with Jakob out of the lineup. He's your third best scorer.
And Richardson's been out too.
Richardson, who's your spark off the bench, you're missing a lot of points. So teams don't have to spread themselves too thin to, know who to key on and put most of their focus on when it comes to guarding this team. And everybody knew Keldon was number one, but now is there a swerve if you take away Devin and Keldon? Is there a swerve that you have to worry about? And I don't think teams are as fearful and just daring other people to beat them more so than anything else.
Yeah. I'm hoping that KJ snaps out of this shooting slump. Again, he's not putting up horrific numbers. For me, I think it'd sting more if we see a 5 for 22 shooting performance that we saw versus the Thunder. Then we look at the point production and it's like 5-6 points, a string of single figure scoring, massive turnovers. He's not turning the ball over. He had one turnover versus
still
the Thunder.
Getting hit.
Yeah. He's still contributing in a good way. Assists, he has 6 assists. Yeah.
Remember what the San Antonio Spurs hung their hat on and why there's a 12 in the rafters at the AT&T Center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bruce Bowen would let Kobe go get 40, but it was on 45 shots.
Yeah. He made his life miserable. Yeah, for those games.
So, sometimes that's just how it is. As long as you're still getting the production, you can keep your teams in games, and that was kind of Kobe's thing. Was he kept his team in games and he would still go off, but sometimes it was just made a living hell by Bruce Bowen, and he had to get a lot of shots up to get those points, but it never affected Kobe. What we're seeing is a whole bunch of people trying to do Bruce Bowen things to the San Antonio Spurs because there's not another option to have to worry about.
Yeah.
Outside of Kevin and
Del. And I really think the injury hit is really affecting spacing. You mentioned Pirtle. There's that big body to set picks for KJ so he can get loose. And
McDermott's been in and out of the lineup all year.
McDermott. You have Sohan, who's missed a couple of games too. Provides also more spark for the team along with Langford. Thank you. So the list goes on and on. But again, KJ may be shooting bad, but he's still contributing in other ways. As mentioned, 6 assists versus the Thunder, 10 rebounds. He had a double-double versus the Lakers in a loss. Minimal turnovers. The last time he had a quote-unquote a lot of turnovers was back on November 15th at Portland with 4 turnovers. Since then, it's been about
revisit this in 4 or 5 games, Jeff. Well, let's make a pact now. Okay. Let's revisit this in about 4 or 5 games.
Okay.
Right? Get through the end of next week, maybe. We'll check back on Keldon and see if he's still shooting poorly, A, and B, if the point production starts to drop off, because that's when I'm really going to get concerned. Yeah. Like you said, putting up like 5 and 9 and 12, and it's like severely under what his average should be. That's when the slump will be like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, or I might be thinking, go Wemby, go Scoot. Yeah. At that point, just forget about it. Just throw in the towel. But when we get back, we're going to look at tonight's game, Spurs-Pelicans, and ask James Pledger if he would wear a ridiculously oversized baseball cap right here on Locked On Spurs. We are back with James Pledger. He is with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. Follow him on Twitter as well. And all the other places. Because I go everywhere, James, and I go to your Twitter page and I see your Twitter handle, obviously. Then I see the Star. You guys got a lot of stuff cooking over there. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But Spurs-Pelicans tonight, James. 9-game losing streak for your silver and black. Does it end tonight, James? The Spurs get a W. Tell us some good news.
No.
Oof. Yeesh. Yeah, I got to agree with you. Pelicans. Zion Williamson. Yeah. Zion Williamson, B.I. Alvarado, who's been taking shooting lessons from Tony Parker. Yeah, that's correct. You heard that right. He said it recently. They come in with a record of 13-8. Pelicans are third best team in the West. Even if the Spurs get an L tonight, James, which all signs are pointing to they will. I just want to see some competitive fire. I miss that competitive fire where you remember the early part of the season where we left feeling good about moral victories. We haven't had a good moral victory feeling in a long time, James.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but like I've said all along throughout the summer when this first started to be a thing after DeJounte was traded, and said, "Get ready, Spurs fans. This is going to be a rough patch. You're going to have to look for reasons to be happy, right?" And last night, or the other night against the Thunder, was a perfect case in point of that. That first half was beautiful. You saw the ball moving around, very few turnovers. Like, I was beautiful. It was followed up by an equally horrendous second half, but those are the things that I'm telling fans. Those are the things you have to look for. Those are the positives within games that you're going to have to find. Incremental growth by, Devin Vassell this year. Jeremy Sohan being a contributor early into this. Like, these are the positives you need to look for in a season that's going to be marred in disappointment.
Well, there might be more disappointment on the horizon tonight for the Spurs as far as an L, but the Pelicans come in with a 2-game winning streak, while the Spurs have lost 3 consecutive games at home. There's that. Now, again, I just want to see competitiveness out of this team. I don't want to see them fold over as we saw against the Thunder, or just get slapped up the head as we've seen in this 9-game losing streak. Show some stuff. Obviously, this all hinges on the injury report. We don't have it as of this recording. So if Pirtle's out and Sohan's out and McDermott's out, well, maybe it might make for a long night. But it's obvious that these losses are mounting on the players. Devin Vassell, after the game versus the Thunder, visibly not happy. Was grabbing himself, grabbing his arm, trying his best to put on a brave face, not get agitated. And he was finally asked, "Are these losses getting to you?" And he said, "Yes, they are." And I think that's another fear I have for this very young team, that these losses are just going to break their spirit, James.
Yeah, that's the only thing you got to be concerned with: morale, spirit, just the mental part of anything, because losses take their toll. But I mean, you see a bunch of teams that lose early and turn around and win late. Yeah. This is just different because some of these younger players, like Keldon, like he came in kind of at the tail end when they were sort of semi-winning, and you still had DeMar and LaMarcus, and now is just a very, very young team that's going to have to grow together. There's not really the veterans that know winning, like, to show them the way on the floor, the way Tim, Tony, Manu were able to in the past, or even as most recently as DeMar and LaMarcus. Yeah. So, like, this is a completely new unit, and they're dealing with something that not a lot of people on this roster have dealt with the success, or can go out and actually show them, like, these are the things that we need to be doing on a consistent basis, whether it's in the training room, whether it's like they're having to figure this out on their own for the most part.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I am predicted an L. I think the losing streak, extends to 10. I think James is on board with that as well. So yeah, long night maybe ahead for your silver and black. But before we let James go so we can nerd out, James, apparently this is the thing. Oversized caps. Now, I'm not talking about just like baggy pants as you and I used to wear back in the 80s or the 90s. I'm talking about just over-the-top, ridiculously oversized baseball caps. A fan was snapped wearing this gigantic Spurs cap at the OKC arena. Took off on fire. I tweeted it out. Spurs fans are laughing at it. But, James, I'm just thinking that this cannot be a trend, because the last thing I want to do is go to an NBA game and see these big bobblehead-sized caps obstructing views of fans. But James Pledger, you're a man of style. You go to work in a coat, a tie. your colleagues make fun of you about that, but they also appreciate it as well. Will James Pledger ever wear an oversized baseball cap?
Wait, the big cap? Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Brian Robinson has a friend that started a business that made this a thing, and he was rocking one after the Commanders win the other over the weekend, and so I all of a sudden see a Spurs hat one here just a few days later. So yes, big hats are sweeping the nation. Is not something that I am going to do. It is not going to fall into my style. But to each their own, and do you?
Well, that guy certainly did him, and definitely got the attention. There were some Spurs players that snapped photos with him. Some other fans sent me pictures of that guy's Instagram account. But I no, there's no way I would wear one of those ever. I can't. I mean, that is just, unless it's just a gag, like just for a quick photo or something. But to wear it for the entire game, to own one, for myself to go out and buy one, no. I can't do that. I hope it's just a badge. I really do. I don't want this to be a thing.
Well, it's a lot like Kyle Kuzma's oversized sweater. Like maybe it's a one.
I sure hope so. Pledger, tell us what's going on at the Star.
Oh man, everything's going on at the Star. Just shaking, baking, making moves over there, starting at 7:00 every weekday morning with R&R in the morning with Rob Thompson, Rudy J. Of course, you got Jimenez from noon to 2, and the Blitz with Jason and Joe taking you all the way home, and then, of course, myself and Jack Thompson on Saturday mornings to help bring you through the weekend and to the games and across the finish line. And, of course, SASportsStar.com has tons of stuff, articles, videos, posts from the host. Like, we've got it all going on there. Just check out SASportsStar.com.
Absolutely. Also, check out Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Ken's 5 Plus app, and wherever you get podcasts, just like Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app and wherever you get podcasts as well. So for James Pledger, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put on a lock in this episode of Locked On Spurs.